Hi, my name's Bekka and I'm from My Dreams of Reading, which is a channel all about reviewing books and talking about writing. Today I'd like to make a confession. I have Asperger's syndrome as well as OCD and dyslexia and dyspraxia, which essentially means I'm really socially awkward and I have a terrible need for routine, I can't spell, and generally I'm really klutzy and can't walk around a room without walking into something, essentially in a nutshell. And I've never found myself reading a book and really relating to a character because they have similar things to me. The closest I've gotten is a book called The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which is an incredible book all about a boy and how he is trying to solve the mystery of why a dog has been murdered in his neighbourhood. And it's really well written, and it was very relatable. But that character had full-blown autism and not Asperger's, and it's still the closest thing I have found to a book that has a character who is like me. Everything else, I've had to sort of find books that have characters who are nothing like me, and that makes it really hard to relate to them. And to be quite honest, there are no books out there where the character has Asperger's or dyslexia or dyspraxia or ADHD or anything else on that spectrum, because people aren't writing these books. People are starting to write more books that include more diverse characters in them. We're getting books like The Christmasaurus, which has a character in it who's in a wheelchair and is being raised by a single father. We're getting more books about characters who are somewhere along the LGBTQA side of things, and we're getting more books about other types of disabilities and things like that. But we're not getting that many books about people who are on the spectrum or have any other sort of neurodivergence. And that's a really sad state to be in, because there's so many people like us out there, and there's nothing we can read where there's characters we can relate to in them. The closest we can get is generally psychology books that's just describing what we're going through and just giving sort of coping methods to it. There's no books out there that we can read that are actually stories with characters we can relate to and give us a sense of the idea that we can be as heroic as any other people out there, because there's not books out there for us. The closest I've gone is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, and while it was incredibly relatable to read a character who's having panic attacks and in large spaces is having to use how he's having to comfort himself with some of his favourite things, it's still the only book I've got that I can read with a character who's like me in it. The rest of the time, there's not characters out there, and I haven't found any. And trust me, I have tried. I have looked everywhere, and there's nothing. The other thing I found is one X-Men character who's called Legion, who supposedly has autism and dissociative identity disorder. But apart from that, there's no other characters out there, and it's such a sad state of being, because the world of TV and film is slowly starting to get there, and it's starting to show more mental health issues and people with Asperger's and stuff like that, because we still have people like Gary Bell on Alphas, and we also have the TV show Monk, which is all about someone who's got OCD, which is a really great start. But we need to start making more books with characters like this in as well, and not just books where they're going about their everyday lives and they're trying to cope with things. We need characters who go on adventures and they're becoming heroic and learning how to cope with being themselves, so we can see people like us doing all the things that other people who are neurotypical can see themselves doing as well. We need to see stuff like this, because, to be honest, people like us are still normal. We just have a bit more problem dealing with the world and dealing with people. That doesn't mean we're not like everybody else, and we don't deserve to see ourselves represented in the book world, because there's so many books out there for people who are going on amazing adventures despite their disabilities or despite whatever prejudice they may be facing. But there's nothing for people like us. We need more characters out there who have these sorts of conditions, who are still being heroic in their own ways. And I don't just mean going out being the chosen one for something. I mean them dealing with whatever issues they have in their own world, even if that world is a magical one or whatever. I mean, we need to have characters who have stuff like Asperger's, and maybe it's books about them moving into school or high school or college or wherever, and they're having to learn how to cope with it and how they learn how to deal with this new territory and all the change that's involved in it. Because that'd be a really interesting book, and a lot of people will be able to relate to that when they have that condition. And hell, even if they don't have that condition and they're still scared about moving on into a new place. But the people with Asperger's can definitely relate to it, and then they can understand and maybe have a bit of point of reference in their heads, so they know what may happen when they move into a new school or whatever the situation is. Also, it can bring them comfort anyway if they're going through the same thing at that time, and that can be a really useful thing. Also, it's just an interesting read and can possibly help the general public who don't understand that much about things like Asperger's to understand what's going on, which would be really great. And you can see, and it can have the general public can understand what's going through someone with Asperger's mind when they're going through something like that. I want to see more characters where they're a chosen one and they have dyspraxia, so they're having trouble learning how to move their body to learn how to fight, because I can't even jump on a trampoline without sort of screwing up, you know? And I want to read about characters who are trying to learn how to fight so they can save the world, and having to try and work out ways where they can learn how to fight and stuff without falling over or something like that, because that'd be really interesting and I can be able to relate to that. I want to see characters who are dyslexic, but they're trying to be writers, or something that involves a whole lot of writing, and how they're trying to get over it. Or they've got to send a message to someone and it's got to be heavily coded, but they're not quite sure how to do it, or they need to read a secret code, but the letters are moving so much and it's really difficult to find. We have characters like Percy Jackson who have a similar thing, but at the same time, that's more because he can read Greek letters, not our alphabet, and while that's quite similar, it's not quite the same thing. I want people who are dyslexic in every language, or possibly just how it's difficult for them, or possibly that the dyslexia helps them solve codes. The possibilities are endless with stuff like this. You can do anything with these characters because we're just like normal people. We just have slightly more difficulties than everybody else, and that's fine. You know, we can have so many books about mental health issues and how people learn to cope with them and how they slowly get over them and learn how to sort of get themselves better. But we need more books about people who don't get better, who have been like this their entire lives, and it's not going to go away anytime soon, no matter how much they try. We need more books about characters like that, so we can relate to them and we can see ourselves for once in our lives. And we need to be able to educate the public in a fun way as well, so more people can understand what we're going through and they can maybe relate more to us and we can relate more to them. The power of books is incredible. We can change the world with books and with people's perceptions on these things as well. We can do anything with the power of books. Honestly, we can, and all we need to do is start writing more books about these things. And also, we need more authors to write books about these things. I have Asperger's, and everything I try and do, I try to write an Asperger character in, or they've got some sort of mental health issue, or something like that to bring more representation to that thing. And I feel like it's so important to have more characters like that out there, and to have more people who have these things writing about it, because that would be brilliant. So then everybody can see that even though we have Asperger's or we're dyslexic or anything like that, we can still write and we can still be creative and we can still relate to people, make people relate to us, and we can spread the word and everything else and educate people on what we really like, and that's so important. And honestly, I just get so passionate about stuff like this. I really think we need more characters out there and more authors writing about stuff like this, or writing anyway while they have these types of conditions and talking about them. It's such an important thing and such a simple thing to do as well. I'm not saying every single book needs something like this in it, but I'm saying a majority of books could have these types of characters in and just don't. And all it takes is for the author to just research that a little bit more and have this character in there. They don't even have to be the main character. They could be a side character or an enemy or anything like that. They could just be in there, and it would just mean the world to so many people. And it would be amazing to see, just have more books where we can relate to people, like in these stories, because so many other people are starting to find books where they can relate to the characters in there because they've got similar conditions to the characters. But we're still lagging behind. We just need to catch up. And I feel like if just a few people started this, we could spread it around the world and really actually get somewhere.